Alright, so here we are pulling into the run-up area. We do have a strong crosswind coming in from the south, so I'm going to have to do a 180 to face into the wind for our run-up checks. Okay, so here we are facing into the wind. Winds are 14 knots coming in from the one, I think from it was 178, just south. Okay, so we go run up checks, check it. Brakes are set, make sure full rich. Fuel selector to both. Check my engine gauges are in the green, oil pressure is green, and oil temperature is rising into the green. I'm going to clear my area to the left, right here. Left is clear, front, right, and back all clear. Throttle up to 1700 RPM. I'm going to do a magneto check. I'm going to look for a drop of 125 RPM when I go from both to left. There's the switch to left. Drop is good. Back to both. I'm going to check right. I'm looking for a 50 RPM difference from the left. Drop is good. Back to both. Our magneto is good. Engine gauge check. We're still in the green with the pressure, and the oil temperature is still rising into the green. I'm going to go ahead and do my ammeter check. I'm going to turn on some electronics and look for any movement in the needle to see if there's any issues with the battery. No movement in the needle, so ammeter check is good. Suction gauge is reading just underneath 5, which is between 4 and 6, which is the normal range, so that's good. Carb heat is hot. I'm going to leave it hot. The mixture, I'm going to check for leaning, twisting the knob for slow adjustments. I'm going to look for an RPM drop. Once the RPM starts to drop, I'm going to push it back into full rich. There's the drop, mixture back to full rich. Throttle, slow to idle. I'm going to listen for any weird sounds coming from the engine, any potential engine stalls. There was one time where I did this, and the engine did kind of start to stall and struggle, but I wasn't listening for it. I didn't know what to listen for, so I was starting to push it back in, and the instructor said, no. You just almost stalled the engine there when you pull it back to slow idle, so let's bring it back, and maybe leave the carb heat open a little more, and increase the RPM just to try and melt some carb ice that might be building up in there. So after the carb heat, after after I pull it back to idle, I put the carb heat back to cold and throttle back up to 1000. Now I'm checking my compasses. I make sure that they're still lined up. I checked confirm my seatbelt was on, my doors and windows were locked. Now I'm going to check my engine gauge. Just still in the green, oil pressure is green, temperature is green as well. No issues with the RPM. Primer is in and locked. Confirm the master switch is on. Magnetos are set to both. Circuit breaker check is good. Carb heat is cold. Mixture full rich. Fuel selector is on both. Now I'm checking my trim is set. Controls are free. Parking brake has been released. Visually confirm it. Now we're gonna do our lineup checks. Alright, so I'm lining up on runway 28. I'm gonna bring my nose just slightly to the right there so I can see any incoming traffic that may not be might be Nordo. Alright, so now I'm doing our lineup checks, which is tilts, takeoff instrument lights, transponder, and SOC. So takeoff time has been recorded. My instructor took care of that for me. Instrument check. That's good. Lights and strobe. Transponder set to altimeter. Traffic check is clear. There's an aircraft across the runway there, but He's gonna hold off. He sees me taking off, so check. Traffic is clear. Make the radio call. Lake Cinco traffic. Cessna Golf Uniform Juliet is lining up on runway 28. Right, here we go. Lined up. Heels to the floor. Full power. 3, 2, 1, and go. Rudders for directional control. Crosswind inputs. Looking for 55. Update. Remember, there's quite a bit of crosswind here, 14 knots. I know it might not be much for you guys, but when I was learning to land in crosswind, 7 knots was giving me a hard time. So the fact that I did pretty well on 14 knots is, quite an improvement, I think. We were looking for best way to climb. Fighting the wind here as well. So at Lake Simcoe Airport, there's quite a lot of trees around the field. So once you get up and above those trees, you really feel the wind push you there. So I did get some drift off of centerline after we took off there. Like as we're climbing, the wind does drift me over. So I noticed that after the first one and made corrections for the next few takeoffs. So we're at 1700 above, or sorry, 1700 ASL. So we start making our left turn into the crosswind. We're going to climb up to circuit altitude of 2,000 feet. Okay, so here I visually confirm that I'm at 90 degrees to the runway and level off at 2,000 feet. So there's no call needed when you're turning crosswind after the climb. Turn downwind here soon, so my call is going to be Lake Simcoe traffic, Cessna Golf from Juliet, turning left downwind for runway 28. Now, one of the challenges here at this airport when you turn downwind, there's a highway that runs almost parallel to the field. I've had a habit of when I turn downwind, I'm downwind parallel to that runway, or I try to follow the path of not the runway, the highway. But that ends up closing me into the field as I get further downwind. I've seen that in my track logs, so I've tried to correct that by not using the highway to guide myself, right? I've picked a point ahead of me, and that's where I'll aim my nose, and I've done this. I've practiced, it sounds weird to say, but on Flight Simulator, I'll do my circuits there as well, just to kind of stay as proficient as I can, or yeah, proficiency, I guess, is what you can do, right? Not current. And I found there's a point that I can aim at to try and keep a straight parallel path to the runway. So I've looked for that point here in real world, and that's where I'm aiming my nose. And then also try and guide myself with the runway that I can see off to my left. The issue here is winds are gusting at 2,000 feet. The winds are at, I think it was 33 knots from the south, so from my right side there. So it is pushing me closer to the field. So I have to angle the plane to grab the plane on my path. That's the initial circuit here. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out what the angle of the crab needs to be in order to maintain a straight parallel track. Alright, so I'm going to do my pre-landing checks here. Checking my my approach speed. I'm turning left base, no need to call left base. So descending left base, and I can start to see here that the wind is going to push me quite a bit out. So I try and get in a little more of a steeper curve, but not too steep. Try and keep an eye on the runway as well, make sure I don't overshoot way too much. I do end up overshooting, but it's correctable. Now the ideal for here is when I turn final, I want to be at 1600, but because the wind is pushing me, I don't have the opportunity to do my long descent on the base. So it's kind of like a curve base. I go from downwind to final on a curve. There you can see I overshot, so I'm making the adjustments to get myself lined up. Now keep in mind the crosswind is now coming from my left side, so I am going to have to crab this in as it is here, while still also making the correction to get myself lined up with the crab. I've set my flaps to 20 degrees. Trying to maintain the crab. Now I'm a little better lined up here, just maintaining the crab on the approach there on the final. Now I've tried this a few ways when I was learning crosswinds. I've tried the crab approach and then fixing the nose with the rudder and the yoke at the end, which I much prefer over just the straight forward slip. I much rather the crab with the correction at the end. So here I'm coming, start making my slight corrections. And so all I can hear here at this point is Mr. Brian Siskin from Midlife Pilot Podcast on the Discord saying, "Fight for the center line, fight for the center line, fight for the center." There I'm fighting for the center line, get a little bit of drift. Nope, can't get me. Yep, nope, I'm coming. I want that center line. And my problem here, like the issue that caused this little drift after touchdown, I didn't keep crosswind inputs not as strongly as I should have. So wheel touchdown, but the wind did kind of pick me a bit and cause me to drift off to the side. I noticed that, and on the second one, so I tried to do a little more correction on the landing. Right, so we come to the stop, do my post landing checks, flaps up. Right, carb heat's hot, mixture's full, rich. Fuel selector both, masters on, mags both. Here we go, fuels to the floor, full power, crosswind inputs. Right, so turning left base there, 1700, looking for 2000, confirming again that I'm 90 degrees to the runway. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to need to do my left crosswind, or left downwind, sorry. Yeah, so Lake Sunker traffic, Golf Uniform Juliet, turning left downwind for runway 28. I can't remember if it was this one or the next one, but there was a helicopter from Air Bravo that was taking off, and he had called in to see where I was. So I informed him. At the time I was on the crosswind off of runway 28, about to turn downwind shortly. He said he had me in sight, and then just before I made my downwind turn, I confirmed that I could have him in sight, since I wouldn't have visual of that side with the wing down on my left. And then once I straightened back out, once I leveled out, I made sure I looked back in that direction to make sure I still had visual contact of the helicopter. Which I did. They were flying in the opposite direction, so we were good there. Again, trying to maintain my, because of the crosswind at this point, I'm not trying to maintain my nose to the point that I identified in my simulator. I'm trying to keep it just slightly to the right of that point so that my track is towards that point. I'm also here expecting the instructor to, pull engine power on me. Simulated engine failure, so I'm trying not to drift too far from the runway, but I'm also not trying to stay too close that the wind is going to keep me right above it either, right? So I'm trying to handle all of that, expecting the engine failure simulation, and expecting the wind to move me closer. So I don't want to pull too far from the runway because of the wind. And then he pulls the engine failure, and I may not be able to make it, even though the wind is going to help me get closer. I just don't want to go too far, but I also don't want to stay too close. I've done my pre-landing checks there. Pull the carb heat to hot, confirm mixtures full rich, fuel selectors on both, mags are on both, and masters on. I'm checking for my airspeed to be within the white arc, so I can pull 10 degrees of flaps. Now I'm turning my my left base and descending again. I expected this one to be like a half circle turn, not a full straight base, because of the wind. And I do end up overshooting again, but not as bad as the first time. I remember looking at the airspeed indicator, and it was really trippy because, like, I guess because of the wind, like I had my needle somewhere between, I think it was below 80, but around 70 knots, right? When I was turning base, and then because of the wind, even on final, like I would find the needle would just kind of suddenly drop, but then pick right back up, right? So it was really trippy because there was no feel in the plane of the speed slowing down or picking back up, right? But the needle would kind of jump. So it was trippy because when it would drop, I didn't want to stall, so I would add more power, but then it would like jump high, like more than the power that I had supplied. So it was when I caught that, I realized, okay, I need to kind of go more with the feel than the actual look of the needle, right? And and try and keep it that way, or maintain it that way. So yeah, I'm coming in with a crab again. Wind's really pushing me, 14 knots directly across the runway. At this point, I've already put in for 20 degrees of flaps. Right now, there I'm doing my correction to maintain center. Crosswind inputs. Mr. Siskin, fight for the center line, fight for the center line, fight for the center line. And here's my center line. A little bit of drift over. Again, not quite as much with the crosswind inputs as I should have. Right, now here, usually our no-go zone is if I haven't taken off by the time I get past taxiway Delta, which is that taxiway to my left there. I abort the takeoff. So initially, I was thinking about getting off the runway onto taxiway Delta and coming back to the threshold of runway 28. But after some, I guess, analysis, we'll call it, after some back and forth, I decided, okay, we're good to take off from here. We got plenty of runway, and I can pick up the speed, no problem. So there, he's telling me about the crosswind inputs. Needing to go more on the crosswind after landing. Make sure my my left wing stays down. Right, so here we go. I've done my takeoff checks, full power, crosswind inputs, wheels to the floor, rudders for directional control. I brought my flaps up, mixture's full rich, fuel selectors on both, mags are both, and master's on. I checked that before we started rolling. We're up in the air, maintaining nose level just to regain some speed. The ground effect issue.